Real Madrid is currently playing in a 4-3-3 formation, with Kylian Mbappé, Mastantuono, and Vinícius leading the attack. Despite what many believed, Xabi Alonso has opted to play with a back four since the beginning of the season, when many believed he was going to play with a back five. In the Club World Cup, we saw Xabi Alonso play with a back five, and Tchouaméni would play in this hybrid role, oftentimes playing as a CDM at the 6 role, and then sometimes tucking in to form a back three. During the preseason, Eduardo Camavinga looked like he was on the cusp of turning back to action for Real Madrid, but he suffered an ankle injury that's kept him on the sidelines for a few more weeks. Despite traveling with Real Madrid and looking like he was on the cusp of returning to action after suffering an injury at the end of the season in La Liga last season, Kamavinga is set to return very soon. But this still raises questions about where Eduardo Camavinga is going to play at Real Madrid with Xabi Alonso, because under Carlo Ancelotti, we saw Eduardo Camavinga arrive at Madrid as a young player, sometimes playing in a double pivot, coming on off the bench to be an instrumental player in helping Real Madrid winning the Champions League, but he hasn't really solidified himself as a guaranteed starter. Sometimes he'd play at the 6. He played at the 6 in the Champions League final against Borussia Dortmund due to the injury of Tchouaméni. We saw him have a stint at left back where he looked phenomenal, but a position we haven't really seen Eduardo Camavinga play often is play at the 8. And on July 16th, Jude Bellingham underwent a surgery on his shoulder, an injury he's been dealing with over the last few months. But this means that Jude Bellingham is set to return to action in October. And in the interim, Arda Güler has filled his shoes playing in an advanced role right behind Kylian Mbappé. By the way, if you guys are new here, make sure to like and subscribe. In the Club World Cup, we saw Xabi Alonso use Jude Bellingham right behind the striker in an advanced role, playing as the number 10 between the lines. What's interesting is when Xabi Alonso joined Real Madrid, in his very first press conference, he said that he saw Jude Bellingham as a more traditional midfielder, a player who would get many touches on the ball. And so many people speculated whether Jude Bellingham would play as a number 8 in a little bit of a deeper role, both helping in terms of ball recovery, but as well as getting many touches on the ball, not necessarily playing as advanced as he did under Carlo Ancelotti. But what we saw Xabi Alonso do with Jude Bellingham in the Club World Cup, he was utilizing him in a very similar role that he was playing last season, because you cannot dispute Jude Bellingham's abilities in the final third. He's a generational player in that regard. But since the start of La Liga, we are seeing Arda Güler, both for club and country, do very well in a very advanced position. Arda Güler in the Club World Cup was playing in a deeper zone, initiating the ball progression from the back, and he was doing it very effectively. But what we're seeing in La Liga, and part of the reason why potentially Arda Güler is playing so high up the pitch, is because many of Real Madrid's opponents play in a very deep block. And so Arda Güler is tasked with being between the lines, receiving the ball, and trying to find his teammates in those positions to play the final pass. So this raises a question about Jude Bellingham, because we all know Jude Bellingham is generational at attacking the box. He's really good at timing his runs behind the back line. And when you think of clutch players, Jude Bellingham is amongst the elite in Europe. But based on Xabi Alonso's first press conference, where he talked about Jude Bellingham and how he wants to utilize him in his system, it also makes sense to have a guy like Jude Bellingham who has that physicality, who can help you win the ball back, to play at the 8. Because in such a short period of time, we've seen what Arda Güler has been able to do in that advanced position. He is breaking records set by both Toni Kroos and Luka Modric in terms of chance creation. And Arda Güler's link up with Kylian Mbappé is second to none. And that's why there's a question about how is Xabi Alonso going to utilize Jude Bellingham and Arda Güler at the same time? Because without a question, you could see that those two players, if you had to name the starting players for Xabi Alonso, which is in question because you have so many elite players in the squad currently, you may only really have 6 or 7 players in the squad currently who are guaranteed starters. And that means there's going to be likely a lot of squad rotation, depending on Real Madrid's opponent and who's healthy. But if the team is fully healthy, you would still expect Arda Güler and Jude Bellingham to both start, with Mastantuono being dropped. And so you may have a situation like you saw in the Club World Cup, where Jude Bellingham sometimes is playing as a number 10. Sometimes he's pressuring the left back. So he's playing in this sort of hybrid role, and then Arda Güler would play a little deeper. But what would be interesting to see is an interchange between both players. because having Arda Güler with many touches on the ball only benefits Real Madrid, but also having Arda Güler in positions where he can hurt the opposition and he can play that decisive final pass is also good for Real Madrid. And so Jude Bellingham's positioning in this team is contingent on what will happen with Arda Güler as well. Another player that is going to be absolutely critical for the success of this football club going forward at only 22 years old is Eduardo Camavinga. There's no doubt that Eduardo Camavinga is one of the best young players in football today. But one of the things that many Real Madrid fans have been calling for is to play Kamavinga in that number 8 position, because he's been utilized as a left back. He's been utilized as a single pivot. He likes to press the ball high up the pitch to create high quality chances. And one of the best players in the world in achieving that objective is Eduardo Camavinga. Camavinga is very good at winning the ball back. He's very good in terms of his physicality, his tenaciousness without the ball. But if you had to pinpoint something that Camavinga is not necessarily as good as, let's say, Tchouaméni, it's some of his decision making in terms of his distribution out of the back. Although he won a Champions League final playing at the 6 against Borussia Dortmund, and he had an impeccable game without misplacing the ball in a dangerous position, you cannot doubt his ball recovery ability. You cannot question the fact that he can pressure the ball and win the ball high up the pitch for you. But Tchouaméni is more reliable in terms of making those decisions with the ball at his feet when he's being pressured in high pressure games. Last season, Kamavinga had a bit of string of bad games and bad form where he was giving up the ball and he's making a little bit of bad decisions in critical moments. And that doesn't take anything away from him, because one of the things that Kamavinga has struggled with since being at Real Madrid is having some sort of continuity, because he's constantly being played in different positions in different systems. And so he's struggled to find a little bit of consistency for him to build off of. But the thing is with Eduardo Camavinga is he's one of the best players in the world in terms of ball carrying as well. In terms of beating deep blocks or beating opponents who are looking to press the ball high up the pitch, Eduardo Camavinga brings a little bit of that spark to Real Madrid's attack that very few players have in the world. But one of the things we've seen with many of the players at Real Madrid is some of the younger players like Eduardo Camavinga, who have not really had a lot of consistency and time to develop their abilities as football players. And if there's one position on the field that you feel like you can maximize Eduardo Camavinga's abilities, it would be at the 8. And the reason for that is, especially if you're in a game where there's transitions, that's where you can have a guy like Eduardo Camavinga really shining, because in transition games, he can not only offer you a lot in the attacking third, but if there's a transition opportunity, he can help recover the ball. So in those games where it's very competitive against the elite sides in Europe, a guy like Kamavinga in your midfield can help you win the game. And so that's why it's so exciting to see the potential of what can happen with a guy like Kamavinga. Because again, at only 22 years old, he's turning 23 later this year. He's been at Real Madrid a few seasons, and he has hardly been a starter and having any kind of consistency as a player. And so if Real Madrid is going to win major trophies this season, Eduardo Camavinga could very well be a player who's a huge part of that success. Let me know what you guys think. I'll be traveling this coming week. I'll be at the game Real Madrid against Marseille. Let me know if you guys want to see a vlog of that. I'll be in Morocco right before that for a wedding, my friend's wedding, and then I'll be in Madrid for the Real Madrid versus Marseille game. So let me know if you guys want to see a vlog of that. Thank you for watching, and Hala Madrid.